Internet, welcome back to the DILF Den. Today we're here to talk about the MIKOLO X GMWD TAWRET. At least I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. This thing has gotten a lot of hype online lately, and I would say rightfully so. For what it is, for what it costs, especially right now, I'll talk about that in a second. It is a pretty high quality piece of equipment. Is it perfect? No. But I would say the pluses far outweigh the minuses here. Talk about the pluses. So fit, finish, craftsmanship are actually really, really good. Numbered holes, which are awesome for just, again, remembering where you're set up. Aluminum pulleys. Small details too, like an angled plate horn on the back. So, your shit's not rattling off. I was able to get the upgraded version with the grippier texture, which isn't like super grippy, but it's pretty high quality. Like when you're sitting on it and stuff, you don't see that kind of like wrinkly stuff after a while you get with cheaper vinyls. The shin pad itself is very thick. No shin discomfort at all. Tons of adjustability. So again, and very smooth in function. Again, you can, pretty good tolerances, not great, but I'll talk about that in a second as well. And again, this is not like a new or super complex design or anything, but I do feel like there was more attention and care put into this design than other iterations of these machines that I've used. So talking about the things that aren't so hot. The fatal flaw with any of these type of machines is going to be there is a lot of play in the seat. Now, that is the cost of adjustability, okay? It's just what it is. If you want something to not move, then don't buy a combo unit. Like, I literally just had a knockoff Prime unit that extension leg curl I sold because the level of play I was getting in it when I was, loading 5, 6, 7 plates on it was just not acceptable to me anymore. So if you want a lot of stability in the movement, buy a standalone unit or buy a commercial unit. Simple as that. Now I will say that I do find this to have a lot more play than other units I have used previously, particularly in the seat itself, just pivoting side to side, especially when I grab onto the handles, which are part of the seat. But once that you're in it, you feel relatively locked in. But when you're using this for quad extensions in particular, you do feel a lot of the kind of recoil in the seat. Now, does that mean it's a bad machine? No, it just means you have to understand the limitations of it. But in general, again, fit, finish, fantastic. The grippy, again, I really do like the pads on it. They're nice and thick. And I guess this is like the second iteration of the pads. The first ones were too thin, and the home gym community is so full of pansies, man. Like, so full of pansies. Like, oh, it hurts my knees. Oh. Anyway, neither here nor there. So, again, in general, a very well-built, sturdy machine. Footprint is slightly larger than other comparable machines, like from Lions Cool, just as an example, or other ones that I'll hopefully talk about here at some point. But again, I think for what it does, and the quality at which it does it is worth the extra few. So one thing I wanted to talk about that I haven't heard many people address out of the dozens and dozens of reviews on this thing, just a real quick lesson on how these type of systems work from a resistance profile perspective. So as you can see here, this is the pivot point. This is where the weight is loaded. So when that weight is here is when it's parallel to the ground, is when it's going to be at its heaviest. Okay, so think about this. It's lighter, heavier, heavier, heaviest, lighter, 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 lightest. Which isn't the worst thing in the world. Okay, in general, most people are going to want some degree of constant tension throughout. So again, if we're talking about having some degree of congruity between the resistance profile of an exercise and the strength profile of a muscle, we would ideally have this heavier in the bottom and going to be lighter at the top. And that's actually with this not a super hard thing to achieve, because there is this little bolt that bolts into the cable, the connection point of the cable. So out of the box, you can set that so you are dead stopping at the very bottom here, each rep. Now, I personally don't love starting these type of exercises from a dead stop. Just doesn't feel great in my knees. I got to generate a lot more force in the bottom from that dead stop than I would really ideally have. So what I like to do is I put this bolt in all the way. And that actually gives about 2 inches of clearance in between the rubber stopper and where the arm starts. So you can see at the very bottom, it's not making any contact. So I find for me, this is a more comfortable starting point. Now, the downside is that puts a lot more strain on this little cable stopper in here. And in Coop's review of this, when he was trying to max the thing out, which I'm not going to do today, it actually popped on him and it broke. Easy to recrimp, but again, so that is the downside of this, is that if you are going to leave this at play, especially or at rest, with plates loaded on it, which I often do with my machines because I'm honestly just fucking lazy, that is going to put a lot more strain on that cable. So just be aware of that. But I do like the ability to have a little more tension in the bottom of this. To again create a little more congruity between the resistance profile of the quad and the strength profile, the strength profile of the quad and the resistance profile of the machine. So here, as you can see, when I get in the machine with the cable at its shortest position, I'm starting basically at parallel here. So there is a nice drop off as I go through the range of motion. And also same with hamstrings, with the curl function. Again, it just has a little more congruity between those two things. So the only other gripe I have about this machine of note would be a couple of things. One, and I talk about this a lot with the, when you see me use this later, when I hop in my time machine to yesterday, when I'm actually training on this thing, is the range of motion could be better for the quad function. Is it bad? No, there's way worse. I mean, that if you look back to like a couple months ago when I reviewed that super cheap one from Temu, which is also super cheap from Temu, I'll talk about that. But that range of motion was dog shit. This is pretty good, but has the potential to be way better. A couple factors at play there. Mostly, this support beam in the middle is where it is, which kind of blocks out the bottom of that. It's, again, is it the worst thing in the world? No, the range of motion is still pretty damn good, all things considered. And if you can hack the cable this way, your starting position is basically where you'd want it to be anyway. But again, I just don't love the level of adjustment this thing has in that respect. From there, I am not someone who loves having a foot pad or shin pad on top of my feet. I just don't, it doesn't feel terribly comfortable to me, even though this is very well padded. That's just my own inter-individual biomechanical issue. I just prefer to sit higher on my shins just because I have to create less torque at the knee. Simple as that. So again, these machines are as good as you want them to be if you understand how you fit into them best. So play around with it, figure out where you feel more comfortable. I will say this is actually a really good option for tall people or taller people. I mean, I'm 5'8". I have short limbs, short tibia, short femurs. So this particular machine does not fit me super, super well, but it's pretty good nonetheless. So again, we're going to go to me yesterday doing hamstring curls and quad extensions with this and talk about some of the pluses, minuses of functional use. biggest ones talking about are there's a lot of deflection in the shin pad, meaning it's uneven as you go through the range of motion, which for me doesn't feel awesome because, again, I'm old and have brittle knees. But for most people, it might not be an issue. And if it's not an issue, you could just do it unilaterally, which I actually do like as a function on this too. So again, it's a good, I would say it is the best of the current offerings in this price bracket, based on what I have seen and what I have myself used. Is it a commercial grade machine? Hell no, not even close. But for what it does, it's supposed to do, it does it very well. So I would recommend this machine, especially right now. Like, I wasn't going to review this machine because there's already a million reviews on it out there. So I'm not like breaking any ground here. I haven't heard anybody talk about how to manipulate the profile on it. But, you know, I'm also, unlike most reviewers on YouTube, I actually lift. Anyway, not the point though. Just think about it this way. It's like anybody take on any sort of equipment. If you got the bread and you got the space, go for it. And again, right now you can get this on. I got this on Temu for like $260. And they've actually taken it off Amazon, and I don't think it's on MIKOLO's site anymore. So either MIKOLO and GMWD are beefing, or they're bringing out a version 2, probably version 2, where they've corrected some of the things I'm talking about. So again, is it perfect? No, but no machine is. I would generally recommend this machine to most people. I would just say, again, have expectations according to the price bracket you're staying in. The hamstring curl function of this machine is pretty solid, all things considered. The pros for this, like with any sort of sundial sort of setup, you can kind of get yourself situated so there's a bit of a pre-stretch on the hamstrings, which is quite nice. The downsides, I really wish this bench, like the seat portion, had an option to go elevate this way a bit more, just so you get a little more hip extension. This isn't bad, and there's actually way worse on the market. And it's actually like, this is pretty good, all things considered, I must say. But I just wish there was like a little way to get a little more out of that. And again, that's kind of a nitpick, but here we are. From there, the resistance profile, even with the hack that I talked about earlier with the cable, still isn't what you want, isn't ideal for hamstrings, in that in a perfect world, you would probably have a little bit of a more of a drop off as you shorten or contract the hamstrings. But again, kind of a nitpick for most people. And again, I've talked on this channel, resistance profiles, strength profiles, how constant tension, not always a good thing, blah, 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 blah. I've talked that to death. Is it perfect? No, but again, it's a home use piece of equipment. For what it does it relatively well. So in terms of how I like to set up this exercise, I like to get my kneecaps right at parallel with the edge of the seat. That lines me up with the point of rotation quite nicely. And you can see there's a decent amount of play in this, but it is what it is. So I'm going to go for a working set here with 180. That's like 445-pound plates. And yeah, see what happens. Okay, so like I said, even with the kind of cable hack, there's still not much of a drop off in the short position, but that's not the end of the world. If you really want to get the most of the hamstring training anyway, you're probably using a seated machine anyway. But there's certainly other ways to scratch that itch in your programming. So again, I think this performs that movement relatively well As you can probably see in here, there was a lot of play and movement while I was performing the exercise. But, you know, home piece of equipment is what it is. It still does what it's supposed to do pretty well. The quad extension function of this machine. Same kind of issues you're going to run into with the hamstring curl in that there is a lot of play, especially at heavier loads. Also, a good bit of deflection in the shin pad, meaning it bends upwards, which it's not like a huge or crazy amount or anything, but it's enough to be noticeable, and it's enough for me to perceptibly feel the load with both legs a little bit differently. Which for someone like me who has some knee issues, those particular pennies add up to dollars relatively quickly if I'm not careful. But here I am suffering for my art. From there, again, profile, not awesome. The range of motion of this versus the um, hamstring curl is quite a bit greater. So there is a lot more of a drop off in the range of motion, which is nice. Again, depending how you want to set the cable and how you want to set your legs thing. The range of motion on this thing isn't the best I've ever used. It's pretty good for a home piece. You can see this crossbar here um, prevents a lot of the functionality of the full sundial, which is, I assume they designed it that way for a reason. I just can't think of a good one. So you're missing out on that. The other thing here is, and again, this is just me talking. I'm 5'8". I don't have very long legs in any way, shape, or form. So I find this shin pad for me doesn't go as high as I would like. I don't really like having these shin pads right on top of my feet. I kind of prefer to have it higher up my shin, just less joint torque that way. But again, it still does pretty well for what it's supposed to do. I mean, it's a leg extension, and it allows you to extend your leg under load. So let's get into it. So I have this set as far back as it will go. It's easy enough to get into. And with this, actually, you can just get into it and then set it for however you like. But I just find it easier to do this. So yeah, this is going to be a working set with 4 45-pound plates or 180 on it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Again, you might be able to see some of the deflection as I go through reps, and you'll definitely be able to see a lot of the play in the seat. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall apart or anything, but it could certainly stand to be tighter. I'll say that. Phrasing. Anyway. Okay. So again, you could see some of the deflection. You could see a lot of play in the seats. But again, it's a home use piece of equipment. If you want commercial grade, go buy commercial grade or a higher tier piece. And if you want something to adjust, there's going to be play in it. I would say again, for what it does, for what it costs, especially right now, and the space it takes up, would totally recommend it. Again, just understand there are limitations. There are going to be some manner of shortcomings, but with any sort of machine like this in this price bracket,
you're going to get that regardless.
So there you have it. Went over the functions of the machine. Again, it does what it's supposed to do, and it does it pretty well. If you can understand how to set yourself up in it and set the machine up, then yeah, that's any machine though. So what I would say is this, especially if you are going to cinch that cable up as short as it will go, I would not leave plates on this, or a lot of plates on it, just because you will put a lot more strain on that ball stopper than you need to otherwise. And that's probably going to reduce the longevity of the machine. So if you found this helpful, you found this useful, and you want to keep hearing my dumbass opine about things, then like, share, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. And we'll see you next time in the Dill